Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today I wanted to add another video to my Homeschooling 101 series because it's a question that I know a lot of new homeschooling parents have, a lot of prospective homeschooling parents have, and a lot of just the general public have. And that's this: how do homeschooling parents teach subjects they don't know? A few years ago, when my oldest daughter started attending art classes, she first had to be interviewed by the director of the art school because she was going for a scholarship. And I remember very clearly that the director of the art school asked me point blank, "How are you going to teach your kids all those subjects that you don't know?" And I realized that that is something that a lot of people want to know. How can parents teach things to their kids that either they don't know, they might not have ever had, or that they never really got a firm handle on? And I know that it's a question that a lot of homeschooling parents have. That's why they get so scared about homeschooling high school. And I also know that prospective homeschooling parents, when they think about this, it kind of scares them off and they decide, well, you know what? I'm better equipped to just send my kids to school where they have that support system of teachers who know what they're doing. And I get it, because most people have this idea of homeschooling as a bunch of kids in a family whose knowledge is never going to surpass that of their parents because they really only have what their parents know to guide them, right? Well, that's not really the case. Contrary to what a lot of people think, homeschooling is not all about mom or dad standing in front of the kids at the front of a schoolroom, lecturing them classroom style. Now, I do want to say that there are some homeschooling families who do that. I used to do it a lot when we first started homeschooling. And even now, depending on what our unit study activities are, I might do maybe a short 2-minute lecture or lesson with the kids when I'm standing there. But most people think that that's what the entire homeschooling day looks like, is mom standing at the front of the room, maybe the kitchen or a classroom or the living room, but that she is teaching the way that you envision teaching to happen. And you know what? While a lot of families will start out that way because that is what you picture school to look like, that's why I did it. I remember when I first started homeschooling, my oldest son was in 9th grade at the time, and he was taking biology, and I used to read his biology chapter the night before he would do it. I would take all of these notes, and then the next day I would write all the notes on the whiteboard, and I would have him copy them. I would read them to him. I would go over things with him, and thankfully I realized after a bit of time that learning doesn't have to look like that. And that is how parents teach their kids things that they might not know everything about. Learning does not have to look like school learning. And that's great news because it makes teaching those difficult subjects more accessible to parents who might not otherwise be able to do that. And I just wanted to give you some ideas on how parents do that. So first of all, I don't ever want to not say enough how cool it is to learn things alongside your kids. Yeah, there are subjects that you might just have forgotten, or you might just need a little bit of brushing up on it. So you can definitely sit down with your kids and learn it alongside of them, and you can work on it together, and it's a really great bonding experience. So don't ever discount learning alongside your child as something that, yeah, it can be done. Now, I realize though that there are a lot of subjects that parents really aren't comfortable doing that, especially if it's something that is like way out there and you think it's way over your head and you would never be able to do it. And there are a lot of different ways to approach subjects like that do not involve sending your kids off to school. So one way is online learning. There are so many different programs that you can use for your kids, whether you use it for all of the subjects or if you only use it for those subjects that you feel that you would not be comfortable teaching to your kids. So some ideas are like Switched On Schoolhouse, Time for Learning, Mr. D Math is really great for parents who aren't really comfortable teaching their kids math. Now, I use ctcmath.com with my kids, and we love that. But I will say that with ctcmath.com, a lot of times I do have to sit down and watch the video with my older kids just to make sure that I have a grasp on how to do it in case they have a question for me. And if you're comfortable doing that, CTC Math is great. What I like about Mr. D Math, my oldest daughter used that for geometry. He actually goes online and he does live classes with students, and you can actually interact with him and you can ask Mr. D questions. So that might be better for parents who want their kids to do math, but that they really don't want to be the ones that are actually there helping them. So you do have options like that. Now the Abeka homeschool curriculum, it has, I'm not sure if it's DVDs or videos, or it might be online learning that kids can do on top of the curriculum. So I have 2 kids who use Abeka Math. We don't use the video or anything like that, but I have a friend who homeschooled both of her girls from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade using the Abeka curriculum along with the DVDs, and she loved it. And, you know, I don't want you to just overlook that. Yeah, there are lots of great programs like that. And there is also one called Liberty Classroom that you could have your kids do as well. And you want to really do your research. Now, I've never done anything like that. So I don't know if, you know, if you do Abeka with the videos, if you have to do all of the subjects that way, or if you can pick and choose which ones you're going to use. I'm not sure. So that is something that you definitely would have to look into yourself. But just remember that there are so many online options, and some of them are interactive, like what I talked about with Mr. D Math, that, you know, you just have to remember that and keep that in your homeschool parent toolbox. So another idea for teaching things that you in particular don't know or don't feel comfortable teaching your kids are co-ops. Now, co-ops are another thing that some of them might make you take all of the classes that they do together, whereas other co-ops might let you pick and choose the ones that you want to do at the co-op, and you can tackle the rest of them at home. So, you know, it's really tough to give like a blanket statement to how all of these things work, because most things work differently, and you just have to look into the one specific to what you're going to be using and find out how you have to do it. Co-ops are great though, because there are often parents who are really good at doing a certain subject. I know someone, she used to teach French at her local co-op because she and her husband lived in France for years. So she was fluent in French, so she taught French at the co-op. And so a lot of times you have parents who will chip in together and they use their areas of expertise to teach things, and then those other things that they really aren't too good at, they don't have to worry about that because they have someone else doing that. And I do know that some co-ops actually also end up hiring teachers too. If they can't find someone, a parent who is able to teach a class, they will hire a teacher. So co-ops are something else that you could have in mind as well. One other thing that I wanted to add to the online learning, or even co-ops as well, is that a lot of times when we think about subjects that we don't know, we think about those things like math. That's usually the first thing that pops to everyone's mind, or maybe like biology, chemistry, physics. But a lot of parents have kids who really want to learn how to, for example, play an instrument, or they really want to learn a foreign language, or they're really good at art, but the parent themselves might not be, you know, the best artists. So that's another thing that you can definitely look into online learning for. And of course, you can also have your kids take music classes and everything, you know, out as extracurriculars. But I know that there are guitar classes online, there are art classes online. A friend of mine actually has a website where she teaches Arabic online. So just remember that it's not just those subjects that you tend to think of, you know, it's those elective subjects too that you can look into. Now, if you don't really want the formality of a co-op, and I'm not going to say that all co-ops are formal. I think that some of them are pretty informal, although some of them really do look a lot like school. So it just depends on what you want for your child and what they want. But if you don't want something as formal as that, maybe you could get together with just another homeschooling family. Maybe they're great at teaching math and you might be great at language arts, and you could just kind of barter, trade things off, and do things together. I know of other homeschooling families who have done that as well. You could also look into tutors or mentors. Now, I know that some libraries do offer free tutoring. That's something that once the libraries open back up, you could find out about that. You can always pay for a tutor as well. Or even if you have like a friend or a family member who was willing to tutor your child in an area that they might know well, but that you particularly don't. Mentors are also great. They are very similar to tutors, but mentors are people that will kind of take your child under their wing, and your child will be working alongside of them, learning a skill. For example, my uncle had wanted to teach one of my kids to do stained glass because that is what he did. And we never got up to him because he lives a little far away from us. But that would be like a mentoring experience where you have someone taking your child under their wing and teaching them as they're doing things. And a lot of colleges I know will sometimes take homeschooling students and they will let them help out with like lab, maybe if there's geology programs that your kids can help with. Just, try to look around. Word of mouth is a great way to find out information on these sorts of things. Talk to other homeschoolers. If you want to, you could even call colleges and see if they're willing to do things like that. But the one thing that you do need as a homeschooling parent is you need to be resourceful and you need to be willing to speak up for your kids, because you're not going to find things out that your kids need or that they would like to do if you're afraid to ask people about it. Now, we can't overlook YouTube videos as being the great resource that they are. Yes, you have to watch a lot of YouTube videos. They're not all great. They're not all things that you want your kids watching, but there are a lot of really great educational YouTube channels out there, and you can find one that your kids would like to use. So for example, we use a YouTube channel once in a while for when we are learning our German together. And so that is something, if you know specifically what subject area you want to look for a channel for, it's much easier to kind of gauge what kind of stuff they're going to have on it. Now I know a few times I've actually just kind of went onto it was a history YouTube channel, and I thought that it would be okay, and I did not watch it ahead of time before my kids, and I thought it would be okay because it was a history thing, and then it ended up saying some things that I didn't want my kids to hear, and I was like, okay, we need to turn that off. So yeah, this is something that you do as the parent need to vet, make sure that they're okay. But YouTube is a great resource, and kids like to watch YouTube. Now, for your older kids, those who are in high school, usually around 11th or 12th grade, you can always do dual enrollment at your local community college. And a lot of times, not only are they getting, that class taken care of for their homeschool, but they can be using those credits sometimes towards their college. If they plan on going to college, they already can cover some of those basic credits that they need. So dual enrollment is another option that you always have in your homeschool tool belt in case your kids are interested in that. Now, one other thing is that I found, especially with my oldest daughter, is that sometimes when I would sit down and try to work through a curriculum with her, I would confuse her even more, because even though I knew what I was talking about, I wouldn't explain them in a way that she in particular understood. So there were times that my daughter said to me, "You know what, Mom? I'll figure this out on my own." And you know what? She did. So if you find a curriculum that is well suited for your child, and if they are motivated and if they want to figure this out on their own, yes, of course, be there to answer questions, or you can be there for guidance. But if your teenager is telling you, "Mom, I got this, I can figure this out," then let them. They're getting older. They need that sort of independence anyway. And let's not forget about allowing for hands-on learning and other learning opportunities that might not look so much like school. My second oldest son, when he did biology, most of his biology was out in the field. He was at the creek every single day. He was looking for snakes, finding frogs. Then he would come back and he would research the things that he found, the insects that he found. He would take up collections of things. He would notebook about them. And I've got to say that my son, he's the one that I've talked about in some of my videos where he had an IEP in school because he has ADHD. And so he always had very low self-esteem because of that. But I am going to tell you that if anyone ever wants an expert in like amphibians or reptiles or insects, especially, okay, arachnids probably more than insects, but my son is the one to do it because he had the freedom to actually follow that deep interest that he had, and I was able to apply that as a credit for him. And so that just leads me into the last thing, and that kind of ties in with what I talked about with my son, is if your child or if your teenager has, a really deeply rooted interest, let them use that interest to cover a credit. A lot of times your schools might tell you basic subjects that have to be covered, but they don't tell you specifically what topics have to be covered or how they have to be covered. And that is great because that gives your kids the freedom and the opportunity to be able to cover those topics in a way that is interesting to them and in a way that suits their learning style best, because your kids know themselves better than anyone, right? So anyway, I hope that these things have helped you for today. I hope they've answered some questions. But no, you as the homeschooling parent, you don't need to stand in front of your kids and lecture them, and you certainly don't need to know everything. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave it over on Instagram because YouTube has gone back to disabling my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.